Something happened at the Metropolitano on Sunday that Atletico Madrid never wanted the cameras to catch. It wasn't a goal, it wasn't a red card, it was a silence broken by something far uglier. And by the time anyone realized what was unfolding, it was already too late to hide it. Julian Alvarez walked out to warm up, and the sound that greeted him wasn't applause. It started low, almost hesitant, before building into something unmistakable. Whistles, then boos, rolling down from the stands like they'd been waiting all summer for exactly this moment. By the time his name was read out over the tannoy, it was a full chorus. This wasn't a rival away end trying to rattle him. This was his home crowd, the same fans who once sang his name, now turning on their own World Cup winner in real time. And what happened next made it clear this was no isolated outburst. 66 minutes into Atletico's draw with Villarreal, Diego Simeone sent him on. The reaction only intensified. Every touch was met with whistles. Every misplaced pass drew groans laced with something closer to contempt than frustration. Then, when the final whistle blew, something happened that told the real story, something Atletico clearly didn't want cameras dwelling on. As his teammates jogged over to applaud the fans, Alvarez was pulled aside and kept away. He never got the chance to face the crowd, because the club itself made sure he wouldn't. And the reason behind that decision is where this story gets interesting. None of this came out of nowhere. The catalyst behind this meltdown traces back to a single sentence, spoken months ago, that Alvarez almost certainly regrets now. Back in June, he let it slip that his true ambition was pulling on a Barcelona shirt. One admission, and the bond between a player and the fan base that adored him began to unravel in ways he clearly never anticipated. For a club with the pride of Atletico Madrid, publicly pining for your fiercest rival isn't a minor slip. It's treated as betrayal, and the Metropolitano has a long memory for exactly this kind of disloyalty. What makes it worse is just how much Atletico stood to lose by letting him walk. This isn't some fringe squad player nobody would miss. He arrived from Manchester City for north of $80 million and immediately became Atletico's talisman. He bagged 29 goals in his very first season, instantly justifying every cent of the fee. That's precisely why the club has drawn such an unmovable line in the sand. President Enrique Cerezo has stated flatly that Alvarez will remain an Atletico player. Insiders in Spain go further, insisting the striker is being treated as effectively untransferable, with his release clause parked at an eye-watering $500 million specifically to scare off suitors. It was supposed to end the conversation entirely. It didn't. If anything, it's only intensified interest from exactly the club Atletico hoped would back off. Arsenal have circled all summer. Mikel Arteta is identified as the driving force behind the interest, with reports suggesting the Gunners have quietly prepared to smash past the $100 million mark to make it happen. On paper, that should have been the obvious escape hatch. A huge fee, a genuine Premier League project, everything a frustrated striker could ask for. Then a fresh twist landed, and it completely rewrites how you should be reading this saga. Reports in Spain claim Arsenal officials made direct contact with Alvarez himself, only to be knocked back. If true, that single detail changes everything. This isn't Arsenal failing to agree a fee with Atletico. This is the player himself closing a door that most strikers in world football would sprint through. So why on earth would he do that? In his head, there's only one destination that matters, and it isn't London. Barcelona remains the obsession, the club he's been chasing since that fateful admission in June, and no amount of Arsenal's ambition seems capable of shaking that fixation loose. Here's the problem, nobody around Alvarez seems willing to say out loud. Barcelona's ability to fund a deal of this size is still deeply in doubt, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. Alvarez may be sitting there right now, turning down a genuine $100 million-plus escape route, purely on the hope that a financially stretched suitor finds the money before the window shuts. And if that gamble doesn't pay off, there may be no way back from what happens next. That is precisely the kind of gamble that turns a boardroom's patience into public fury. And judging by Sunday night, Atletico's fans have already run out of patience. Sunday's scenes at the Metropolitano were the loudest signal yet of how far the relationship has fractured. Reuters described the booing as beginning the moment Alvarez's name appeared on the stadium screen. It continued through his warm-up and reached its peak the second he stepped onto the pitch as a substitute. Spanish outlet AS called the reception nothing short of a thunderous chorus of whistles. This is a fan base that once idolized him, now treating their own record signing like an enemy in their own colors. And the person you'd expect to defend him publicly did something far more telling instead. Simeone, when pressed afterward on what advice he'd give his struggling forward, offered nothing at all. He confirmed only that the decision to keep Alvarez from greeting the crowd came from the club itself, adding simply that his focus was on doing his job for Atletico. Read between the lines, and the message is unmistakable. When a manager won't even offer a word of guidance to one of his most valuable players in a moment like that, the relationship has already shifted from partnership to damage control. And damage control, it turns out, is exactly what this has become. Atletico didn't distance Alvarez from the fans by accident. They physically intervened, choosing to manage the optics of a crumbling relationship rather than let it play out organically in front of the cameras. That's not the behavior of a club confident their star striker's future is settled. It's the posture of a club quietly bracing for an exit they can't yet control the terms of. So what do Arsenal actually stand to gain from all this chaos? So where does that leave the two suitors circling this mess? Arsenal, for all their genuine interest and their financial muscle, currently sit in the worst possible position. Not the dream, but the fallback. Every report out of Spain confirms the same uncomfortable truth. Barcelona remains Alvarez's priority, regardless of whether Barcelona can actually deliver. Arsenal are left waiting on a domino they have zero control over, hoping that Barcelona's well-documented financial limits finally force Alvarez to reconsider the offer already sitting in front of him. It's a waiting game with no guaranteed payoff, and it isn't the only pattern worth noticing here. This isn't the first time this summer the Gunners have found themselves circling a player who publicly holds out for someone else first. It's a familiar shape: chase, get close, watch the target's heart sit elsewhere, wait. The difference with Alvarez is the sheer scale of what's now unraveling in public. This isn't a quiet transfer standoff playing out in agents' offices. It's boos echoing around a packed stadium, broadcast live, dissected by every major outlet in Spain and England within hours. And the financial reality only sharpens just how humiliating that is. Atletico didn't sign Alvarez as a squad rotation option. They built a title challenge around him and handed him the responsibility of leading the line, and he delivered, repaying that trust with a debut season most strikers only dream of. To now see that same player jeered by the very supporters who once chanted his name is the kind of reversal that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when a player mishandles a moment, when a club refuses to bend, and when a fan base decides collectively that loyalty runs in both directions. One side has broken it, and that leaves Simeone stuck in a position no manager wants to be in. He has to manage a first-team squad while one of his most important attackers is being whistled every time he touches the ball. He can't be seen publicly siding against the fans or against his own player. That's not a sustainable position to hold for long. Something in this saga has to give. Either the crowd's hostility cools, Atletico relent and sell, or Alvarez is forced to somehow win back a fan base that currently wants nothing to do with him. Right now, none of those three outcomes look close. For Alvarez, the walls are closing in from every direction. His preferred destination can't guarantee the money. The fallback option is being coldly rejected on principle, and the club paying his wages is now managing him less like a talisman and more like a liability they're waiting to offload on their own terms. This is the forward who arrived 12 months ago as Atletico's most exciting signing in years. Now he's booed by his own supporters, shielded from them by his own club, and cornered by a transfer saga entirely of his own making. The Metropolitano has made its feelings brutally clear. The only question left is whether Alvarez still has time to choose a way out, or whether he's about to discover that turning your back on a fan base is far easier than winning it back. Do you think Arsenal should walk away from this saga completely, or is Alvarez still worth the gamble? Drop your take in the comments, and subscribe for the next update the moment this window-closing chaos breaks.